Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. My name is Mitch Michals, and we're joined now. I think this might be the most guest appearances by anyone on the show. This is time number 3 with the two-time major champion and the cover of this month's tennis magazine. It's been a couple of decades since her very first tennis magazine cover as a young child, but she's on the annual Academy issue as the official ambassador. Welcome to the show yet again, Tracy Austin.
Always great to talk to you, Mitch.
Yeah, we won't have to get into the specifics of just how long ago it was since the first one. There's a lot.
It's out there, Mitch. Everybody knows. I mean, Joel Drucker wrote about it in the first line about how long ago it was. So.
Yeah, it's a lifetime in tennis, and you wear many hats. We're going to get into it, and maybe, I mean, looking at the background there, fitting us into the schedule, I really appreciate that. But if someone happens to like string a racket in the background, we're prepared.
Yeah, I am in the pro shop at La Quinta Hotel, so I tried to fancy it up a little bit so it looked more like a tennis background. But here we go. We're at Indian Wells. It's one of everybody's favorite tournaments, so it's very appropriate.
Now, Indian Wells, we're going to talk current events before we get to the magazine cover and a little bit about yourself and that great feature by Joel Drucker. The Indian Wells tournament, we're back again. It's the right time of year. It's still kind of crazy, right? 2 Indian Wells in 5 months. This is a lot of tennis paradise coming at us.
We're getting spoiled. Yes. I think everybody is really breathing a sigh of relief that we're back to March this time of the year. It's one of the favorite tournaments for everybody, the players, the journalists, TV, fans. I think they really enjoy coming out here. I see so many fans that make it a destination. They put it on their calendar. It's just a beautiful time of the year to be out here. The pros, I really appreciate it. There's so many places to stay, places to eat. They really feel like it's tennis paradise.
Yeah. And last year in the fall was great. It was, great, improvisation in a lot of ways, try to make it happen and get it done. This just feels a little more natural coming out in the spring, this time in the calendar. A lot of great players in this event and a lot of different ways we can start with, but I'm going to start with the men's side. Rafael Nadal coming in with his best start of his career, and what a career it's been, obviously. 15-0, 3 titles. Indian Wells and Acapulco. He's riding that Acapulco train. And Tracy, it's not just that he's won, but it's how he's won and how he looks. Where would you assess his form? There's not really a lot to nitpick. He is just locked in, playing free and playing some of the best tennis of his life.
It's incredible that at 35, you can say he's playing some of the best tennis of his life. And that's coming off the back end of missing the last 5 months of last year, didn't play after Washington, D.C. because of that foot injury that he says has been bothering him for years, and he's just been able to manage it. He doesn't think that he's ever going to be able to make it just go away. Even a month before the Australian Open, he was still trying to manage the pain. So then he gets COVID right before he goes down to Australia. I'm not sure his expectations were, extremely, extremely high. Goes down 2-0 against Medvedev in the finals, who's playing incredible tennis. And now Medvedev has enough experience with the US Open major under his belt. And you're thinking, okay, how is Nadal going to come back? And the warrior that he is, it was, I think, one of the best Grand Slam finals that we've seen. And then for him to continue, and just the joy, the passion that he's playing with, he seems extra appreciative because that injury, and I think, was career threatening at the end of last year, especially at his age, his physicality, and how long he's dealt with that. So it really is quite an interesting, incredible start of the year.
These guys, the big three especially, I mean, they could walk away at any point. The accolades are amazing. And why are they still there? It's because they love tennis, not just loving winning as Rafa does, but he loves the process. He loves putting in the time, putting in the effort. And that's something you can relate to. Like he even talked about his injury. The thing that he hates the most about it is he can't practice and train like he used to.
Yes.
It's just somebody that just loves the grind and the process of making himself into a champion.
Yes, absolutely. You just get the feel that he loves the competition, being on the court. And oftentimes that's difficult if you're not able to put in the hard yards in practice. So I think he's realized that he has to back off a little bit, maybe not practice quite as much. He said that his schedule, he's going to be more selective this year. You know, he was asked a couple of weeks ago about whether he's thinking about #1 in the world again. He said, you know what, I'm going to play the tournaments that I can play, that I feel that I can manage my foot and that injury. And if #1 comes, it comes, but that's not his ultimate goal right now. He seems so process oriented. And I think journalists these days, we're into numbers. How, you know, he's at 21 now. How many more can he get to? Can he get to #1? Whereas Rafa, he's got the keys to joy in tennis, is just getting up every day, competing as hard as he can and as best as he can that day. And for all the other players, that's the way I think to do it. It's hard to do because we're so much of the time we're thinking about rankings and prize money and where we're sitting as far as our confidence. But Rafa seems to have mastered it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've seen the video on Twitter that's circulating where his interview, like he treats every player, like getting asked about them in his upcoming match, like it's Federer in a Grand Slam final.
So
like,
much respect.
The respect and the process, and he really does enjoy it. And speaking of Roger, I'm getting those flashbacks of Roger in 2017, same age as Rafa is now, 35 years old. Wins an improbable, some would say, going into the start of the year Australian Open, and then just has that free, joyful like approach to the game, approach to life, and has that second, third, fourth act, whatever you want to call it. So there's some pretty stark comparisons there at their point in their careers.
Yeah, and I think when you've won so much, when you've accomplished so much, I would think that there would have to be a feeling of, wow, this is all bonus and I'm enjoying it. Because obviously, as you said, they could all put the racket down now, could be considered in the conversation. That's what's so interesting is these three guys have won 61 majors in their era. And what's even more incredible is the sustainability, the ability to play year after year at that same level. You see so many players, even on the women's side, we see this fluctuation between weeks. And for those three guys to be out there for 2 decades, to have the motivation to fight off injuries, to be able to fend off these new ones that come up in every single era, and they're still beating them back. And to still have that determination to keep pushing themselves, because every 5 years, let's say you compare to the 5 years before, everybody's better. So you have to keep improving. Those three to do that for 2 decades is absolutely insane, with a capital I and an exclamation point. Looking
at Rafa just in this tournament, getting the beneficiary of getting back into that top 4 range, which he wasn't at, to, going into this season, looks like Sebastian Korda could be who he's up against first. Dan Evans maybe is the seed there. So it's not, it's not a bruising draw for him. We're going to get to why, a certain section of this draw is open in a second, but we'll see how Nadal goes into these matches. Korda Nadal could be fun. I mean, I think that Sebastian, with his start of the year, with getting COVID, not being able to hit the ground running, is still trying to find his groove.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we're getting into the micro of it. Yes, it's Nadal possibly against Korda or Kokkinakis, who's a qualifier. But you start to move out. There's no doubt in my mind that this top half of the draw is heavy, because with Djokovic in the draw, but then having to pull out after the draw was made, you now have 3 of the top 4 ranked players that are in the draw, all in that top half. So there's no doubt that top half is heavy. As a player, all you can do is just look at the next round. That's what's most important. It's easy to get lost in the weeds of looking too far in advance. But, the balls here get puffy after about 2 games. They really get heavy. The courts are slow. They're gritty. The ball bounces high. The ball bounces through the air quickly, flies through the air quickly because of the desert air. So these seem to be good conditions for Rafa. He's won it 3 times. It's been a while. I think it's been 9 years now since he's won it. He stays at Larry Ellison's house with his 19-hole golf course out his front door. I think it's one of his favorite tournaments. I think Larry Ellison built a whole wing for his whole team. Yeah. So Rafa's very happy to be out here and to be playing. And 15-0, it's a great way to start the year.
Yeah, 3-0, 3 times, I should say, winning Indian Wells. Hasn't won Miami, where the conditions aren't as great for his game, for sure. No Djokovic, as you alluded to, as you mentioned, waited till after the draw was announced before the formal withdrawal, couldn't get access to the country. It's unfortunate we're not going to see him now, not in Miami and not until the clay court season. It just completely opens up this draw. Dimitrov, the 33rd player, gets his seed, and Rublev will be the big winner in this because that was supposed to be his quarter. Looking at it from just the tennis side of things and what we're trying to see here, it is unfortunate that it happened post-draw because there wasn't an ability to even things out. But those are the breaks. Those are what happened, and we'll just have to see if Grigor can take advantage of this opportunity.
So are we going to just gloss right over what happened, or do we dig into that a little bit? What do you think, Mitch?
We can dig into it for sure. I mean, and it's not just.
I mean, it happened. It's just unfortunate that.
Yeah.
All involved. I'm going to go with that, whether it's Djokovic, the ATP, Indian Wells, whoever.
You're talking in terms of not having the official withdrawal right until after the draw.
Until after the draw. Because it affects even João Sousa, who was going to be the next player in. If Djokovic pulled out, he wouldn't have been playing qualifying. So, it does make the draw a little bit more lopsided. It is what it is, but yeah, I mean, still to have Djokovic, heck, he's 2-1 for the year. He's only been able to play one tournament, and he won't play again apparently until Monte Carlo. I mean, this is just such a crazy time, because when you think that he wasn't able to play in Australia, and then he was vying for his 21st major, and it was Rafa who was able to play and get his 21st major. I'm just going to stay right on the fence here and say it was Novak's opportunity to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. So it's just a crazy time that we're going through right now, but we have plenty of huge names, and I think it opens up that bottom half of the draw, as you said, because Dimitrov now is the 33 seed. He takes that draw, he takes that spot in that little portion. You got Andy Murray, who's a wild card. You've got Sinner, you've got Schwartzman, Rublev, it would be the 8th seed. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it's a little bit more open on that bottom half to see who gets through.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, I do want to mention, shout out to Andy Murray for making the announcement. He's going to donate his prize money for the rest of the year.
Rest of the year. It's not just this tournament.
I know.
So he seems to make so many right decisions. Whether it's hiring a woman coach, the things that he seems to stand for, it seems to be really positive.
Yeah. And I just love the fact that he's not settled, not happy. He wants more. Like, he's not just doing this as I want to prove I'm back. He still wants to contend. The fire's still there.
And that's tough to extinguish. If you're a Grand Slam champion, if you've won, 3 majors and 2 golds, that fire's got to be burning pretty bright in order to push yourself through all of the twinges and some little nagging injuries and the ups and the downs. So, and obviously the hip surgery. So yeah, without a doubt, the way that he's competing, you as an athlete, what you want to do is to be able to go out on your terms and not because of an injury. So yeah, I love watching Andy compete the way that he thinks. You can see how he's really dissecting the court, reading the court well, his opponent. He's fun to watch.
Yeah, and he's proven that he's gotten back to that high level. I think the biggest thing, and you probably agree with this, is the recovery into the next match. Like, in one match in these tournaments, he's great. He's at that top 10 level. Okay, play again after a heavy match. And, Australia, it was play, and then he won his match against Bazasvili and then played Tara Daniel. It's a lot more running. So that's where I'm a little worried, is the recovery after one great match.
Well, the thing is that Andy doesn't have that 1-2 punch. It's not the one huge serve and then the forehand that's going to finish the point. Andy's going to need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, especially on the courts out here. I was watching him practice the other day. It's so accurate. It was fascinating to watch, just the way that he hits with fluidity and so close to the lines. But you could tell that it's not going to be the same firepower as some of the others that are right at the top of the game. So that's going to take its toll. A couple of hard matches in the second round or the third round or whatever it is, and it starts to to wear you down.
More with Tracy Austin here on Tennis Channel Inside In. The #1 seed, the #1 player for the first time going into a tournament in his career, DANIIL Medvedev. Still just sounds weird to say that we have a #1 that's not in the Big Four, but I'll try to get used to it. He goes into this tournament as the top ranked player in the world. And I'll ask you this. Do you think he is in need of a big result? Does he have to, maybe in his mind, legitimize this? Does he have a problem maybe mentally with a guy like Rafael Nadal, who seemed to have, gotten the better of him in the last 5 sets they played?
Yeah, I can't get inside Medvedev's head, but if I'm Medvedev, I'm feeling like I totally deserve it. I mean, number one, you put the numbers in the computer and it all spits out to where you are compared to everybody over the last 52 weeks, over the last 12 months. And I think Medvedev has had those enough success that he feels confident in himself. Obviously, he's now lost to Rafa the last 2 times. The one in Mexico was an outstanding match from Rafa. He played at such an incredible level. It was, I think, the same day that Medvedev found out, or maybe it was the next day. It was 1 or 2 days later that Medvedev found out he was number 1 in the world, which is a pretty heavy moment. It could have been a lot of emotion, and also the war started. So that was a lot for Medvedev to take in. But I clearly think that Medvedev deserves it, and huge kudos to him, because it's been since 2004 that nobody named, the big 3 plus Andy Murray, hasn't been number 1 in the world. So to break in, now there've been some extenuating circumstances, Roger obviously not playing, and then Djokovic not being able to play in Australia. But I'm just going to go with it that Medvedev, actually, when you think about it, there was Thiem who had gotten to number 3. There was Zverev who'd gotten to number 3 in the world. Tsitsipas who'd gotten to number 3. And, Medvedev kind of leapfrogged all of those guys and became number 1 in the world. So I think it's truly well-deserved. And I think those guys were starting to feel like, okay, is the lane opening? Because had to be feeling for so many of the guys, say in the late 20s, like that lane is just completely congested, because the big 3 are just not giving anything up. And now you have these younger guys, Sinner. How about Alcaraz? I think that guy's going to be number 1 in the world. He's in that top portion with Medvedev, and he's in a really. I was watching him practice the other day. He hits the daylights out of the ball and is so physical for someone young. And to have Juan Carlos Ferrero in his camp, former world number 1, to help you with any of the, kind of navigate your way up the rankings with any questions that you might have, look for him. Very exciting time.
Yeah, and Alcaraz still growing, it seems. I mean,
where can he grow more? There's muscles everywhere.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Taller, stronger, everything. And just in regards to Medvedev, you touched on something I wanted you to expand on, if possible. The heaviness of becoming number 1 in the world. Outside of, tennis fans and even journalists and reporters, we kind of get this sense that, okay, it's all about Grand Slams. It's how many majors you win, that experience. But you hear certain players say that have been fortunate enough to work hard enough and get to number 1 in the world. That means just as much, if not more, to them. And you dream about being the best in your field. Did you have that in relation to the majors you won when you got to number 1?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think the majors are even more top heavy than they were back when I played, because the French and the Australian weren't quite as big as Wimbledon and the US Open. But I think, it all depends. Getting that number 1 ranking for the first time is, for most, really something that is that you dream about. I think winning that first major also, I would think of them as, I don't know.
Like
if I had to pick one, probably. It'd be winning a major, because that's tangible. That's something you can grab. You've got that trophy. But then if I had to win a second major or become world number 1, I would go with world number 1. So I think they're both at the top of the list. The other thing that is kind of an emotional thing is to win a Davis Cup or a Fed Cup, which is now the Billie Jean King Cup, for your country. So I think that's the trifecta for me that is what you go for. It's interesting, because that number 1 is kind of, it's not as tangible. But when Medvedev's told, by winning this match, you're going to become world number 1, or it was actually Djokovic losing the match, he would become world number 1. Think about that moment, because you're number 1 on the whole entire planet. I mean, Medvedev, that's heady stuff. And it's something that he probably was dreaming of. And then, as he said, it started to become a reality. There's a lot on the line, and we've seen so many that have gotten to number 2, and with a win here, you get to number 1, or a loss, and they haven't quite made it. So it was, it's pretty cool.
getting that validation. You're the best in the world at what you do. It has to be a pretty special moment. Before we,
there's so many jobs that you do where there's not that number one, and this is clear cut.
Before we switch to the women, any other thoughts on this draw? Some players that might emerge. You mentioned Alcaraz, and everybody loves that guy. Zverev's coming off of a rough couple weeks. What his form looks like, that he's even in this event. Tsitsipas, who's been kind of lurking a little bit under the radar. This is Rublev again. So there's a lot of options of some players that can make noise and make deep runs.
Yeah, how about Taylor Fritz? He got to the semis here last year. So, but he's in, I like his draw overall. You know, there's so many players. Shapovalov, how is he going to come through with his game? He hits big enough to hit through these slower courts. Riley Opelka, my goodness, his serve, that kick serve is going to be jumping so high up out of the strike zone. Cameron Norrie, he's defending a lot of points as the champion last year. I'm really excited because it does seem pretty open, and it hasn't always been that way in the last few years, and pretty open on the men's and the women's side.
Yeah, I mean, we've also got Nick Kyrgios in this event, and if he wins a couple matches, he could play Casper Ruud, who they're not, there's no love lost there. So the storylines are there. There's going to be some drama. It's not just going to be chalk. We know that with this tournament. Last year was a great example.
And I think we need to mention, for fans that don't follow it every single second, is that Nick Kyrgios had to get a wild card. His ranking has dropped down. So he plays Sebastian Baez, and it's, Stevie Johnson and Sam Querrey actually had to get a wild card. Their ranking has dropped outside the top 100. It's Mitch. I was talking to a guy, I'm not going to say a player, earlier today, who's ranked, I'm going to make it a range between 80 and 120 or 30. And they were talking about how hard it is to get into the top 100. And I thought it was really interesting because they were saying that you really need to make about $250,000 just to break even, to have a coach come with you for all of your expenses and your coach's expenses. And that's the pressure that they're feeling to get inside that top 100, where you can get that big check, even if you lose in the first round for all four majors. I think sometimes we talk so much about the top players that we forget what, 80 to 130 and those players are really going through just to try to make a living.
Yeah, the grind is very tough. I do think that there's been better steps made. The Challenger Tour, some tournaments here, and we'll see with the rotating calendar, with some events in places that we're not going to be having tennis again. Maybe that opens the door. So got to look at it positive. That's a good segue into.
I just wanted to throw that in there because I just thought it was something that we just don't talk about much, and it was just an hour ago that I talked to a player.
Well, I think it's a perfect segue because the rankings are a little, I would say, out of whack, and you see players getting wild card. The women's rankings, I mean, if you looked at them and you looked by name recognition, you'd say, how is this player ranked so low in a lot of cases? We have a first round matchup in this tournament of Naomi Osaka and Sloane Stephens, which is kind of insane. It's insane on the surface. Naomi's ranking is plummeted. I think most of it is to not playing a lot of tennis in the last calendar year. Sloane wins her first title in a couple seasons as well, coming in with momentum, and actually leads that head-to-head 2-0. So that is a barn burner right off the start, and I'll be interested to see the form, particularly Naomi, after not having played since Australia.
Yeah, and it will be interesting because, as you said, Naomi hasn't not played as much, but yet when she walks in the gates here at Indian Wells, this was a really big breakout tournament where she has these great emotions, because anytime you have the memories of winning a title, it gives you, I think, a little bit of extra boost of confidence. You mentioned that Sloane won the title in Mexico a couple of weeks ago, which was really important for her. I did 2 or 3 of her matches down there, and she clawed her way through some 3-setters. It was a different level, the players that she was playing down in Mexico, so it should be a jump up playing Osaka. But overall, Sloane, I think where Sloane should be is easily back into the top 20, top 15. If she really gets her mind and digs her heels in. And then Osaka, it is insane that she's ranked a dangerous floater with a capital D and a capital F is what you would call Naomi Osaka. It's
crazy. And I felt that way. We felt that way about Sloane for the last couple of years too, as an underdog, as someone that's not the favorite, quote unquote, the higher seed. Sloane is always as dangerous as it gets.
Well, you never know, in my opinion, how Sloane is gonna play. It's so much in her hands. If she's really mentally invested, and she could win, tournaments. She could get to the quarters of majors, get to the semis of majors again. So dangerous. The upside, the ceiling at 28. I'd still like to see Sloane make one huge run where she gets back to the top of the game. She has the capability and the tools to do that.
I'm fascinated with all women's tournaments, it seems nowadays, but specifically this one. The top seed, Ash Barty, not coming over, is going to stay in Australia. There's the Billie Jean King Cup tie coming up. She wants to stay committed to that and the travel, which is understandable. It was supposed to be Barbara Krejcikova, but she withdrew. So now you have Sabalenka as the de facto top seed remaining. And then Iga Swiatek, who I couldn't have been more impressed with her in the last tournament that she played. Her all-court game has been insane. So if Sabalenka is your top seed, let's see what happens when she serves. It's one of the biggest roller coasters in tennis. We could be looking at another field where 20 to 30 women have reasonable chances to make a run and win this thing.
Yeah, that story of unpredictability on the WTA tour continues. You hit the nail on the head with Sabalenka having those serving woes at the beginning of the year. She's made one quarter. So she got to the fourth round, I believe, at the Australian Open, but she's just 6-5 for the year. So that's an incredibly mediocre record for somebody who's the top seed here. It's going to be depending on how confident she is coming in here, whether she can work her way through the draw, because each match that you play, you start to feel better with the conditions. And I will say, before I came in here, it was so windy out here, Mitch. There's days where it's brutal to play.
That's not good for her.
Obviously, it's on both sides of the net, but you're not going to get your cleanest ball striking because it is so windy. We have days where it's really hot. We have nights are pretty cold. The ball flies more in the day when it's hotter. So every tournament has conditions. These might be a little more extreme sometimes with the wind. But Swiatek, as you mentioned, she looked so impressive, winning that title a couple of weeks ago in the Middle East. Just the all-court game, the athleticism seemed to be a little more calm, not quite as anxious on the court. These would seem to be good conditions for her. As I said, enough penetration through her shots, through her power shots, but she's got some good spin rotation on her shots that she can get the ball up high, because the balls really grab and they really they use the movement. So, I mean, Kontaveit has had an incredible last 7 months, won 4 titles last year, another title this year, but she hasn't had that big run. And well, she got to the finals of the WTA finals last year, but something like maybe winning Indian Wells like Badosa did last year, that would put her more in the conversation than she has been.
More with Tracy Austin on Tennis Channel Inside In, talking Indian Wells, the women's singles draw. Paul Badosa, the defending champ. Yeah, that's another one who this really catapulted her whole season. She's coming in locked in. A little tense energy because she just flat out said during tiebreak 10 she expects to be engaged in the next year. So
that was wild.
The pressure is on, but not on her.
Oh my gosh. What was fun about that, Mitch, is you saw the personalities of these young ladies, right?
Yeah.
I wish we could see that side more often, because there's so much on the line every time they're going out there, but you saw the interaction between each other, seemed the warmth. I mean, Ons Jabeur getting down there and being the photographer. The fact that Badosa put a lot of pressure on her boyfriend, and then she kind of even gave that look like, I'm waiting. So great personalities. Yes, they seem to be enjoying themselves. So Badosa and Azarenka, how about that final last year? That was incredibly high level of tennis. And I think it just accentuates, Mitch, what you said is we have no idea. Coco Gauff, I'm going to bring her name up because I thought she has played very well this year in spurts, and particularly the last couple of tournaments, I've seen that her forehand is shored up. Last year, her forehand would break down. She'd hit it late. It wasn't accountable. It's a weapon now. That's something maybe that's not as reliable as her backhand still 100%, but the fact that she's driving through the court with that forehand side, her serve is much improved, and she's still only 17. I think she's just about to turn 18.
Couple days.
But
Yeah.
I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and she would get Halep in the third round. Halep's someone no one's really talking about, seated outside the top 20, coming back from injury. It's a process. I think she's making good strides. I don't know if it's going to be this tournament, but I feel like she'll be back in the top 10 in no time. And then just someone else that you mentioned.
Wait, hold on. You just kind of moved over that Halep and Goff in the third round. That is exciting.
That's where we are with seeding, I think, especially, if you don't have those ranking points up, this is what will happen.
Dangerous floaters. Yep, exactly.
Pliskova was someone I wanted to mention because she's made the semis twice here, quarterfinals, another 2 sets of time. I feel like her style of game with conditions is kind of suited to do well here. She's at the 7 range and has been pretty much, I think, seated in the top 10 for most of her last decade. So she's somebody that's, I think, there as well.
Pliskova, I think, is going to struggle because she hasn't played because of injury. She hasn't played since the WTA finals. Are you talking Karolina Pliskova?
Yeah. And no, that's fair. I mean, I think
when you've been out that long, I think her expectations are going to be much lower. And, you got to get that rust off. We know with Pliskova, though, if she can get a couple rounds under her belt, the slower conditions, we'll see. I mean, it's just that's the roll of the dice. But I would much rather play, say, a Pliskova at the number 7 seed than, say, a Muguruza at the number 8 seed, because Muguruza has been playing the last 2-3 months.
I think the draw too is a little more favorable. No disrespect to the ladies in her path, but it isn't the Coco and Simona Halep, collision course there. Raducanu's in there, who plays Garcia, and how Emma keeps going on this path of post life-changing U.S. Open win is also something to consider. Caroline Garcia has been around the block, so she's going to bring her, her A game, and it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and I think so much of that game, that match between Raducanu and Garcia, is how they play. Garcia, I actually watched the match against Jastrzemska last night, and she was up a set in a break, almost 2 breaks, and kind of got nervous, which is understandable. Every match is so valuable as far as regaining the ranking that Caroline Garcia, she was ranked top 5 before. So she got a little bit tight. It was a topsy-turvy match. So that's an opportunity, I would think, if I'm Caroline Garcia against Raducanu, because Raducanu hasn't won a ton of matches. She's got to be starting to feel the pressure of, trying to get wins on the board. But we know what Raducanu can do. We know her highest level, winning 10 matches in a row at the US Open. That's why we watch, though, is to see how in these moments the players are handling the pressure. It'll be fun to watch.
I got to say, my favorite section of this draw, mini little section, is that section 5, where you have Leylah Fernandez, Shelby Rogers, who beat Fernandez in this tournament last year, and Isimova's down there, and then Yelena Ostapenko, who is when it's on, it's incredible. She just randomly, I love how every couple of years she just turns herself into the best player in the world. It's kind of nice.
Who, Ostapenko?
Yeah.
It's been an incredible run. When she gets hot, it seems like the other player really is just along for the ride. If Ostapenko, I like her toss better this year. Ostapenko's toss used to be out in the Pacific Ocean somewhere, and she was fishing for it. It's a little bit better, so that it's more manageable. She's not going quite as big. She seems to be getting more first serves in. But once the point starts, once she gets confidence behind those shots where she's going for the lines or 2 feet inside the lines, it's a pretty much a roller coaster, and it's been a happy one for Ostapenko right now.
Yeah, we'll have to do like a storyboard of the funniest faces players make when they serve, and I think she's gonna get maybe the cover or something.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Or Garcia, who looks up. Remember how she looks up when she serves?
Yeah.
Or Sophia Kenin, who's looking. Yeah. Where does she look? I think she looks down.
Wild card as well. Sophia Kenin in this tournament had to, because of where the ranking points went. So another level to see. And then last player I wanted to mention, just to kind of segue into it. How would you think it would compare side by side when you were playing your workout routine and Maria Sakkari's?
Mitch,
different eras.
Yeah, hers is probably a little bit more intense. She does have more muscles than I do. I have total respect for Maria Sakkari. The fact that coming on, I think, a little late. She seemed to be a late bloomer. She wasn't one of the top juniors. I remember doing her match at Wimbledon for BBC, and she took Venus Williams to 3 sets. Nobody had really heard of Sakkari, but I thought, who is this girl? She's an incredible competitor. And every year she's just chipped away at it, where was consistent, then started adding more firepower, obviously the strength, the athleticism, handling the nerves better. So she's, smack dab in the middle of the 10 and top 10. So much respect for her. She's a very tough out.
Want to see her and Ons Jabeur in the 4th round. Fun match, a lot of personality, a lot of flair, different styles. Could be fun.
Absolutely.
All right, Tracy Austin joining us here. It was a good primer for Indian Wells. We're really going to enjoy the tennis. But Tracy, you got to talk about yourself now, because the magazine cover, Tennis Magazine, you're the ambassador on their Academy issue. 55 years to the day of the first time you're ever on a magazine as a 4-year-old.
As a 4-year-old.
Holding the racket. And here's the first thing, because I always like to kind of do research on it. I went back and looked. Do you know what the #1 song in the world was when you were on that? You know, the Billboard #1 song was when you were on your first magazine cover?
I would have no idea. I mean, I wouldn't even know the artist. You just think I'm going to pull that out of my hat?
Not sure. Okay. Artist was a band called it was Association.
What?
Association.
That's the name of the band?
That's the name of the band.
Oh, Mitch.
You have to look up the song Windy by Association, because
Windy?
That was the #1 song in the world.
How does that song go?
Well, oddly enough, I did jot something down here. There's a line in there about how Windy is this mythical figure girl or whatever, and she has wings to fly above the clouds. So I don't know if there was some destiny there as well.
I feel like I know this song. If you would just sing the tune, Mitch, I might be able to help you.
Yeah, they were kind of that 60s, I don't want to say boy band, but a cappella. My voice is a little deep for that. So we're gonna try not to get this show canceled. But it's crazy. Just the process I wanted to ask you about. Shout out again to the team, Joel Drucker, Ed McGrogan, Jordan Sanford. What was the process like, having the feature written about you, going through the photo shoot of it? We saw those cool images, being on Tennis Magazine right there.
There it is.
Perfect framing there on that one. And just if in that process you reflected about anything in a lifetime of tennis still going.
Yeah, it was pretty special. I think the storyline overall was how, the player that I was, but that I kind of left the game early and had to make those adjustments, had to kind of reinvent myself and go into the commentary, go into being a mom. And now I have a player that's on the tour, a professional tour, Brandon Holt, who's playing on the tour, working with corporations, making speeches. So I thought Joel Drucker, who we know is an excellent writer, did an interesting job of kind of breaking down all the different hats that I wear, and writing about it, pulling people from all portions of my life to talk. It was a very generous letter to the publisher, or letter from the publisher, from Chrissy Everett at the beginning of the magazine. So, and this cover, what's funny, it takes a long time. They got there at 9, they did makeup and hair, and they take photos at your house with your dog, with your this, with your that, so many that aren't even in the magazine. Then we went to the Jack Kramer Tennis Club, where my mom worked since really the day that I was born, and took photos there. Jordan Ashley, who actually did the cover, the photographer, who's very creative, she wanted the business suit and the high heels.
I don't think you ever played a match in that.
No, I think I'd get plantar fasciitis very quickly. But then she wanted the tennis balls for creative pop of color. And then she wanted the US Open trophy. So it was just kind of fun. And Jordan kept coming up with new ideas. So we started at 9 that day, worked until 4. And then with Joel Drucker, we also worked on an instructional part of the magazine. And I'm pretty particular. So we worked for 2 or 3 hours to try to make it succinct and really readable and educational. So it's a long process, a lot of terrific people to come up with the ideas, a lot of people that I have to thank.
Yeah, it was a great article, as I keep saying, and just reading about your story and the different sections of your life in tennis. I kept coming back to the fact that it almost seemed, Tracy, that you were like destined to be in this tennis world. The heights that you got were extraordinary, but do you ever think of the timing of it? Like, you're born with all those older brothers and sisters, everybody in the tennis world. Your mom works at that Kramer club that just opens. Vic Braden's there. You have all these opportunities to succeed that you were able to kind of manifest into one of the best careers.
Yeah, Mitch, I actually think about that all the time, and I'm very appreciative because I think so many pieces of the puzzle have to come together. You know, that movie Perfect Storm, I felt like it was a perfect storm. The fact that, as you said, my mom literally opened the club with Vic Braden and Jack Kramer 2 weeks after I was born. So 13 courts were available to me at all times. Once I started being able to walk, the fact that I had 3 older brothers and an older sister who played tennis, I was always watching them. I always wanted to be part of that. My mom working at the club 6 days a week in Southern California, where there's plenty of other kids to play that were really going for the same types of goals. Vic Braden, who was the wonderful coach who made it fun at the beginning, hitting balloons and doing relay races. And then at 7, he decided to leave, and they brought in Robert Lansdorp, who's this taskmaster. Good thing he didn't start with Robert because I wouldn't have liked it. But it was the perfect timing for somebody to come in who, like Robert, who taught Pete Sampras and Lindsay Davenport and Maria Sharapova and probably 100 others that made the professional tour. He really wanted to perfect really good strokes. He was hard on me. That was the kind of personality that I needed. So yeah, you're exactly right as far as so many elements that needed to come together. The biggest being the fact that I absolutely love tennis still to this day. And, you know, without that passion, you have to push yourself. You have to want it. I think there's a lot of parents that push from behind. You'll get only to a certain level. And after that, you have to be the one at the end of the day that says, you know what, I want to win on Saturday. So I'm going to go practice my serve for a few more minutes. Or, hey, you know, Mr. Smith, can you play a set tomorrow? Because I want a little bit more so that I hope I win that tournament on the weekend.
You were kind of like patient zero of this Southern California pro tennis boom that we started seeing, because you mentioned Sampras, Lindsay Davenport, the names that followed after you, and cite you as an inspiration. In looking at your career, one other thing I wanted to ask is, where does that mixed doubles title with your brother John at Wimbledon rank on your accomplishments in tennis?
Wow, that makes me emotional because Mitch, that was never even in the dreams. That wasn't even part of something that I thought was possible. I played with my brother John the year before at Wimbledon just because I wanted some extra matches on that weird, awkward, unique surface of grass, which was worse back in the day where the ball really didn't bounce. And we didn't do that well. And I said, John, I really, I didn't enjoy that. The guys hitting balls at me, in mixed doubles. And he said, let's just try it one more time. Let's play this year. I said, okay, we'll play one more time. And to get through all of those matches, and you look at some of the names that we beat, it was interesting that so many of the top players were playing mixed doubles back then, because you needed to play a lot of, 3 events in order to make some money. I was playing it just to try to get some extra matches. So for us to win matches every night, go back with most of our family there and sit over our dinner and talk about, the break points that we were able to save, and then come through and win the title with a sibling. Yeah. It's very, very special with both of our parents there. It's pretty special.
A few more things with Tracy Austin before we wrap up this episode of Tennis Channel Inside In. One of the other features and one of the other highlights in the article is you're getting into commentary. It's, it's insane how long you've been doing this and starting kind of not from scratch, but just getting thrown right in there, getting the opportunity to call matches. And you said, as former athletes, there's nothing that can really replace playing, the desire, the competition. But you said commentary is the closest thing. So I think that it's obviously a part of what you've done and how you've kind of stayed relevant to the game is you're kind of still in the action as best you can be by calling these matches.
I love dissecting a tennis match, and it's not just the strategy, it's the physicality, it's the emotional, the mental part, all of those components that come through and really are so important as to whether you're going to win or you're going to lose a match. And there's some tipping points in matches that I think are important to try to recognize and bring that to the fan as to what might be happening, the strategic, the tactical changes that are happening. All of that fascinated me as a tennis player. I mean, Mitch, you know me, I'm not that big. I'm about 5'5". So I wasn't going to I hit pretty hard from the baseline, but you know what I mean? I wasn't going to just rocket these serve. I had to work my points right, and think through my points, good shot selection, good mental toughness. And I think that really helps me in my commentary to recognize what's changing in a match. And that's, I feel like, is what my job is, to bring that to the fans, as to what's changed from the first set to the second set. And I absolutely love it. I love sitting there, in the trenches is what I call it, and see how the ebbs and flows of a match and what's going to make someone come through to victory. It's fun.
Was there a point, like a couple years, maybe a couple months after you started getting into it, where you made that slow transition to considering yourself in your own mind a commentator? Because you have in the back of your mind, I'm sure, I'm a player, I'm this, I'm that, and then you do it for enough, and now you view yourself maybe as that established commentator.
Yeah, I don't remember. I like you said, I was thrown into it. I was the number 2 seed at Wimbledon, and I think I was 21, and I got a stress fracture in my back, so I had to pull out. NBC came and said,
21.
would you like to call the 2 weeks for NBC? I thought, okay, I'm not going to be doing anything for 8 weeks because I've got the stress fracture in my back. Let's go for it. There's no school that you can go to for commentary, so you're thrown into it.
Yeah.
But like you said, I enjoy the game, and I feel very lucky that I had that other career that I could go to.
It also kind of mentions the fact that your day still, where you are, what you've accomplished, comfortable, but you still grind. Like, there is a lot of activities, and obviously being a mother is part of that too, but it's teaching, it's commentating, it's motherly duties, it's getting on the court to play yourself. You feel like you're built for that as well as an athlete, as a former tennis player? You know what it's like to accomplish a lot and still stay active?
Multitask, Mitch. Come on, let's go.
Let's go.
I'm challenged by it all. The most important thing over the last 25 years was raising my 3 boys, making sure that I was Dylan, Brandon, and Sean, making sure that I was home to be there. And without a doubt, that is actually could show you my badge here that says that I am Tracy Austin, ATP player guest of Brandon Holt. This is my favorite badge I've ever gotten in my career, because Brandon played in the qualifying. He lost to John Millman.
Tough match. That's a tough guy to play against. And
tough.
Shout out to Brandon.
He nails. He doesn't give you one free point. So much respect. But that was always important. But at the US Open, I do the corporate stuff, which people don't even know that's going on in all of those suites. So it's corporations hiring players to come to their suites and dissect the match. I do it oftentimes with Andy Roddick, and we'll go to 9 different suites and talk about the tournament at the US Open, what's happening in the matches. There's so much that, as you said, that I probably have about 7 hats, and I love them all.
What's your favorite part about teaching, whether it's, kids or doing some of these instructionals with adults? What do you still like? What do you still get the most out of as far as teaching goes?
I did it this morning for an hour and a half. It's telling somebody one thing and triggering improvement. And you see that light bulb go off, and they're like, wow, okay. And it really helps their game. It's a lot of fun to see, people improve instantly. I love tennis. They love tennis. And if I can help them, it's a real joy. It's also a joy to help some kids that are, trying to make some great strides in their junior competition. If I can help them oftentimes mentally, and the light bulb goes off to how to think more productively, how to think more positively. All of these things bring me joy when I can help others. So it's, I feel pretty fortunate.
Yeah. And that kind of answered the question as well. You obviously still love tennis just as much as you did when you started holding the racket for the first time. That looked like it was just going to top you over on that first magazine cover.
Yeah, Joe, if you came on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Kramer Club and saw our workout that we do, you would see that I'm pretty intense still, in a good way, pretty, competitive, just love it. I feel very fortunate that I'm able to still play, at a high level. And that's something that dentist appointments don't get involved in, hair appointments don't get involved in. Don't mess with my tennis, because I still love it at 100 out of 100 level.
So last thing, this has been a great chat. Really happy to have you on, Tracy. I'm very grateful any chance I get to talk tennis with you. Would you consider yourself a Tiger mom and just one of those crazy tennis parents, or are you just more subdued, when you watch your sons play, whether it's USC or at the pro level now?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the middle, and I'll tell you why. I think in the beginning, I was leaning more towards Tiger Mom because I have such intensity. I'm a personality, but I realize that doesn't work with everybody. So I'm pretty proud of myself to reel myself in. It didn't happen in a day, Mitch. It probably didn't happen in a month, but I learned that not everybody feels the same way. And this is actually what I would tell tennis parents out there. And this is really important, I think, to listen to, is that read what your kids are sending you. And you might have 3 different kids that feel 3 different ways about tennis. One's really intense and wants to be the top level. One enjoys it and wants to go to high school tennis, and that's all they really care about. They enjoy hitting the ball. They enjoy the social aspect. You've got to read the room. And then you might have a kid in the middle that wants college tennis, but nothing more. So I think what I see in parents that can make mistakes is they mix up what they want for their kid to what their kid wants. And that's not going to produce, great feelings in the end. And at the end of the day, when they're 30 and 40, that's where we want a good relationship. So I think that I'm pretty proud of myself. I don't give myself kudos, but I'm pretty proud of myself for pulling back. Even the other night when Brandon was playing, I held my hands, and my arms were sore the next day from just holding my hands. Don't move, don't flinch, don't make any facial expressions, just be supportive. And that's really what your job is. So I'm definitely not just chill out there, Mitch. Okay. When he played college, I had to sit like 2 courts over just so that I was out of sight line. But okay. I think all of those things, is in life. We have to, try to get them through, and they're all different. And that's really important to listen to what they're bringing to the table. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. And it's refreshing to hear that someone, has that perspective. And
admits that I wasn't perfect in the beginning. Far from it. I had a lot to learn.
Other parents will see that and say, okay, she's made adjustments. I think we can as well. Tracy, this was great. I did fib. There's one other thing left. We try to, since you've had such an interesting life, and I try to just do more research and find one more interesting thing about you going in. So we'll end it with the trivia question I have for you. And that is, because we talked last time, and it was maybe my favorite part, hearing you talk about going on the Johnny Carson show. So 1977, you're on the Johnny Carson show. I just want to know if you know who the other 2 guests were.
Mitch, you come up with these, #1 song in 19.
This one, you were there. Like you were in backstage area.
I was 14 years old. I was a nervous wreck. I probably wanted to say 3 words. I think I giggled the whole time. Okay. Give me some hints.
Okay. Here, I'll go with the big guest. He is a big movie star. No longer with us anymore. But a big
that helps me a lot, Mitch.
A big movie star in the black and white era, and was in one of the most iconic Christmas movies there ever was.
Bing Crosby?
No. Oh, that's a good guess. Although
that is a darn good guess.
I think that was in color, though. I'm not really sure, but I think they did that in color. Christmas movie about a guy who is thinking about, how bad it is in his own situation, and then, gets kind of knocked up and has a
Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes,
Jimmy Stewart. Didn't talk with Jimmy Stewart at all. Didn't talk shop a little bit.
I have no idea. The thing is people will come up and say, you did this, you did that. I think it was such a whirlwind that I've forgotten so much, and I wish that I hadn't.
Yeah, and it just highlights the whole center of this, is that was when you were 14 years old. Like, you were already thrust in the limelight then. We're still going strong, and we'll have 5 more decades of magazine covers to talk
Wait,
about.
Mitch, you're cheating me. Who was the other guest?
The other guest? Oh yeah, the other guest.
Oh, hint.
Singer. This one I don't really know, and it's probably a little harder to get, but she was a singer, did some modeling and fashion stuff. So I can just tell you the answer, because I don't think you're going to know it. Her name was Donna Theodore.
Yep. I wouldn't have gotten that from now until,
19.
Yeah.
And that's only the first time. I don't know who else, what other appearances you were on as well. So we'll have to.
I like your research, Mitch. This is fun.
We'll have to save some Tracy trivia for next time, because there's plenty more. There's plenty more. Tracy Austin, always a pleasure talking tennis with you. Have fun down in the desert covering Indian Wells and still doing your 10 different tasks. And again, congrats on, Brandon for making it into the qualifying round and just doing a good job there and getting to practice with the other Brandon Nakashima, which I know you're very proud of as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mitch, always enjoy to talk to you. You do a great job, great research. So can I show
one more time? Yeah.
One more time. This was pretty special. And I want to thank the people from Tennis Magazine Tennis Channel that also own Tennis Magazine for coming up with this idea. And for all you tennis fans out there, make sure that you read the article about all the instruction, but don't play in high heels because you will get a bad foot and an injury, maybe possibly an ankle sprain.
Okay, lesson one, I'm going to leave my heels at home. Perfect.
Leave them at home.
Tracy Austin, thank you again. Look forward to chatting soon.
Bye, Mitch. Thanks so much.